Right.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This regular meeting of the Township Council is being held in accordance with the scheduled meetings of the Township Council established and adopted by the Township Council, which schedule designated the time, date, and place of this meeting. Adequate public notice of this meeting has been provided pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act. We are using an electronic amplifying and recording device, and in order to obtain an audible and clear record, we request that all those wishing to speak be recognized and state your name and address directly into the mic. The recording device is to be solely utilized by the Township Clerk's Office for the preparation of the minutes and shall be the official record of the Township Council meetings. Roll call, please.
Mr. Hutchison?
Present.
Ms. Grace? Here. Mr. Munoz?
Here.
Mrs. Stubbs?
She is on vacation.
Mrs. Winters? Here. Mrs. Strato?
Here.
Mr. Mercado?
He is on vacation.
Mr. Carlemere?
Here.
Mr. Cardis?
Here.
Mr. Lechner?
Here.
Chief Harkins? Mr. Chadwell?
Here.
Thank you. We will now have our first public portion. This is for agenda items only. Anyone addressing council may speak one at a time, state your name and your address. You will have 3 minutes, each 15 minutes total. Anyone for the first public portion? And seeing none, we'll close the first public portion. Proclamation.
Whereas 50 years ago, the 26th Amendment to the United States Constitution took effect, lowering the universal voting age in America from 21 years to 18 years. Millions of young Americans were extended the right to vote, empowering more young people than ever before to help shape our country. And whereas the right to vote has been secured by generations of leaders over our history, from the women's groups of the early 20th century to the civil rights activists of the 1960s. For young people, the movement to lower America's voting age took years of hard work and self-advocacy to make a dream a reality. Yet once proposed in Congress in 1971, the 26th Amendment was ratified in the shortest time span of any constitutional amendment in American history. And whereas on July 5th, 1971, President Richard Nixon signed the amendment into law, allowing millions of new young people to vote in the 1972 election. And whereas we mark the 50th anniversary of the passage of the 26th Amendment and reflect on its impact to engage young adults in becoming active participants in American democracy. And whereas today, young adults across America continue to exercise this enormous responsibility of citizenship. Countless young people are involved in the political process, dedicated to ensuring their votes are heard. And whereas today and for the last 50 years, systemic and legislative barriers continue to make full democracy participation unduly difficult for young voters. And whereas today we must renew the effort to invest in strengthening history and civic learning and to ensure that civic learning opportunities are delivered equitably throughout the country. And whereas ideas from the young Americans are important to us as elected officials, and they will help shape the future of our nation. We are committed to supporting and developing young leaders from all beliefs and backgrounds, and from urban and rural communities alike. And whereas young adults have been a driving force for change in the last century, bringing new ideas and high hopes to our national dialogue. Today, we remember the efforts of those who fought for their seat at the table, and we encourage coming generations to claim their place in our democracy. Now, therefore, be it resolved that David R. Mayor of the Township of Gloucester and Orlando Mercado, President of Council, do hereby proclaim and recognize that July 5th, 2021 marked the 26th Amendment Day in the Township of Gloucester. Call upon all New Jerseyans to participate in ceremonies and activities that honor young Americans and those who have fought for freedom and justice in our country.
Proclamation, Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over, 2021 statewide Labor Day crackdown. Whereas approximately 1/3 of all fatal traffic crashes in the United States involved impaired drivers, and whereas impaired driving crashes killed 10,142 people in the United States in 2019, and whereas impaired driving crashes cost the United States almost $44 billion a year, and whereas during the past 5 years, New Jersey roadways experienced 35,307 crashes and 618 fatalities involving impaired drivers, and whereas an enforcement crackdown is planned to combat impaired driving, and whereas the end of summer, Labor Day, period is traditionally a time for social gatherings which include alcohol, and whereas the state of New Jersey Division of Highway Traffic Safety has asked law enforcement agencies throughout the state to participate in the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over 2021 statewide Labor Day crackdown, and whereas the project will involve increased impaired driving enforcement from August 2021 through September 6, 2021, and whereas an increase in impaired driving enforcement and a reduction in impaired driving will save lives on our roadways. Therefore, be it resolved that I, David R. Mayor of the Township of Gloucester, and I, Orlando Mercado, President of Council, declare the Township of Gloucester's support for the Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over 2021 statewide Labor Day crackdown from August 2021 through September 6, 2021, and pledges to increase awareness of the dangers of driving while impaired by alcohol or drugs. Ordinances of first reading, O-21-10, ordinance amending Blackwood West redevelopment plan. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Vignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes. Resolution of consent agenda. Any council person have any comments on the consent agenda? Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Vignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes. Regular agenda R-2108-262. Resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Gloucester accepting the 2020 audit of the Township of Gloucester. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Hutchison?
Yes.
Ms. Grace? Yes. Mr. Vignon?
Yes.
Mrs. Winters? Yes. Mrs. Strato?
Yes. All right. Our GTE Gov questions? All right. All right. From Denise Coyne, Shoes Landing Road in Laurel Springs. Questions for council. 1, who was or is the designated redeveloper for the interchange redevelopment plan? The answer to that is the interchange redevelopment area comprises multiple block lots that are generally at the interchange on the west side of Route 42. There have been several designated redevelopers. Number two, who is the redeveloper for the Villages of Gloucester redevelopment plans? To the best of Ken's knowledge, there was no applicant has applied to develop a project in accordance with the Villages of Gloucester Township redevelopment plan. At the number three, at the July 12th meeting, council president said he would follow up with the mayor to see if the community could be involved with redevelopment planning. Is there an update? And I have not received any information on that at this point. Number four, have any property owners or developers applied for any grants or financing for property improvements or demolition within the Villages of Gloucester? And that we would have to defer to Triad Associates.
Next question.
All right. Yes. Okay, so the number four. Okay. All right, so I have an update in response to number four, small business assistant grant applications within the Village of Gloucester Township. We have Erica Kanopka, On Point Dance Center, Chad Milstein, Auto Images, Jay Choi, Blackwood Cleaners, and Gary Moore, General Moore Contractors.
I believe they're all $5,000.
Thank you. In case you didn't hear, he believes they're all $5,000. All right, so we're good. All right. Now, all right, this is from Pete Heimball. His question is,
That wasn't a,
okay, so all right,
I responded to this question.
All right.
You have copies.
thank you.
My response.
All right, so that's this one.
Question.
Did I get them all? All right, we're good.
Yep.
Sorry. All right, so we'll now open up the second public portion, which is on any item. We have a 5-minute limit for each person and a half-hour total. Pete?
Good evening, Pete Eingold, Morningstar Court. My comments relate to a topic that's come up before this council. In prior discussions of this topic is the Gloucester Township Housing Authority's Market to Affordable program. In prior discussions, council was not aware of the costs associated with this program. So I now have an update of those costs. For the program director, I guess his title is, Patrick Murray, since November of 2019, he's been paid $8.80 per month as a part-time employee. On top of that, there's been payroll expenses, and they run through a payroll taxes because he's being considered an employee, and payroll expenses related to paying his payroll. So, and once in a while, he got paid a little bit more than the $8.80 per month. So rounded up, it's really close to it, and even $1,000 per month. So that program's been up and running for 20. It's been spending for 22 months. So that's $22,000. There's also $200 per month for office rental expense for Patrick Murray's workspace. So that's $4,400 during the life of this program. There's also been rounded $8,000 paid to Triad as a consultant for this program. To address another question related to this, I asked for the contract. That came up at the last meeting. I asked for the contract, the engagement contract for Patrick Murray, and embarrassingly, I was sent meeting minutes from the October 2019 meeting minutes, where the Housing Authority Board approved the funds to pay a unnamed program director. That was it. That was the contract. So there's no term, there's no amount even given. There's not a single term of contract, a duration, an amount, performance requirements. That would be pretty important. None of that. So we're free. It seems to be contractually, we're free to stop that today. So we've also asked, so those are the costs and the lack of a contract for the work that's being performed. We've asked several times for what benefit has been provided to the township through this program, and we haven't received any response. In fact, when we've asked that question at a housing authority meeting, asked for emails that were back and forth between Mr. Murray and Mrs. Carlemere, the chair of the housing authority, and other such things, the response we got was everything has been verbal. So that either sounds like a crock or very unprofessional. So I'm going to assume we received zero benefit from this program in the 22 months. Is there anyone that can say otherwise to that statement? So
Does anybody have anything to add?
Well, isn't Murray also executive director for the Housing Authority?
no, that would be a no.
That's not.
Executive Tech, I guess they're not. There's no executive director to the housing authority.
I mean, that,
But they're not the housing authority. They're the senior campus.
I think they serve, I'm not sure.
Well, it has nothing to do with this
You should ask them
discussion.
that question, I know they have to have an executive.
Well, it has nothing to do with this discussion. So I'm calling to drop this program today.
There's a little bit of dialogue based on what you're saying. Can you just let that happen?
Well, it has nothing to do with what I was saying. So
Okay, then I'll ask a question based upon that. What, can you just refresh our recollection, everybody here, what is the relationship of the Gloucester Township Housing Authority to the township?
The township adopted a housing authority, the Gloucester Township, I can't remember how many years, the housing authority before I ever got involved in Gloucester Township, so we're back a lot of years. They have once they're appointed, they're independent, in a sense, they're a housing authority. They have their own attorneys representing them. They have an executive director that's governed by the statute in the state of New Jersey as to how they operate and they function.
If I
They
don't,
built that Campus One, and through their financing, with the advice of their attorneys, as they went through development of it, it's functioning very well, in my opinion.
but if
that's
I,
real interesting, but it has nothing to do with the comment I'm making. Okay.
if I don't like a decision of the housing authority, what can I do to change that decision?
That's kind of a broad question.
I know, I can be specific. If I disagree with the housing authority, and I'm not saying I do or I don't, but let's say I disagree with this market to affordable at this point. I think it's a waste, let's say. What can I do to direct them and say, that's got to stop?
Well, the township appointed many years ago the housing authority to be involved in the affordable housing program in the market for that's how all this came about. That was part of our fair, and still part of our fair share plan that we were the Council of Affordable Housing and now the courts that were mandated as part of our accomplishment. Now, we had a conference hearing this morning with the courts. There's coming up towards the end of this month of the year or at the beginning of next year, probably some changes. the fair share plan is changing. The requirements of market to affordable are going to be moved out, but our representation to the court is that we're still committed to market to affordable. So the program is still ongoing, market to affordable. Last month I spoke to the attorney, and there is a pamphlet being prepared that they would like to submit to the township for us to review and the governing body to review as to how the market to affordable program is going to move forward. I know the areas they're looking at, but it's not appropriate to say where they're looking because it involves purchase of real estate. They have general areas that have been defined that are appropriate for market to affordable, that are not expensive, because not only do you have to purchase the property under market to affordable, but then you have to dedicate it, remodel it, and repair it, rehab it, and then sell it, and dedicate it as a market to affordable low-income housing.
One last question is, when will we be given more information that can be disseminated to the public?
Once that manual is prepared, their attorney would like township council to review and have input on that market to affordable program.
Their attorney to the housing authority.
The housing authority, the code is from, Amy Schotmeyer is the
Council President, can we give Mr. Heimbach additional time because I took up a significant amount of his time?
Sure.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. So this manual or pamphlet, this is month 22. A manual or pamphlet should have been month 2, maybe. Especially when activity was slowed down during the pandemic. I'm allowing for pandemic slowing things down. But there's your manual. Month 22 is not when you submit a manual to lawyers and have some other lawyers look at it. Month 2, you can do that. So right there's,
I beg to differ with you.
That's not a fair assessment.
all right, 4, 6, not 22.
Still not a fair assessment.
Yeah, I beg to differ with you on that.
22? Month 22 is appropriate?
Well, I think what you have to look at is, you said that this came into fruition or existence around the late 2019. Okay, and when did the pandemic hit? February.
We're discussing a manual.
February
We're discussing a manual, not a house rehab.
February, March 2020.
Yes,
And we're still dealing with the effects of that. So I beg to differ with you.
on a manual.
Go ahead, Pete.
And also, the funding we're talking about to pay Mr. Murray, to pay Triad, comes from trust funds that are directed by this body, by Mr. Carter's manages them. So to say we don't have anything to do with this, or what do we have to do with it, can we stop it? You're directing the funds. You're directing the funds to this. So none of this makes any sense. I mean, what's stopping, why this to me, this seems cut and dry. Obviously not to you. To me, it seems cut and dry. You stop it yesterday and stop the leak of spending without benefit and without even benefits on the horizon, where we have a manual on the horizon. So I think it's so cut and dry that I'm baffled why we don't stop that yesterday. That's any response to that?
I think you've heard enough of a response. You just simply disagree with it.
A manual on month 22 and zero benefit and tens of thousands of costs. Yes, sure, I disagree with that. I'm baffled. Mr. Hutchinson doesn't disagree with it. But thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right?
Good evening, Council. Ray Polidor from the historic village of Ariel. The market affordable is one of my favorite subjects to speak on with you guys. It seems that for the most part, since this conversation has begun, you guys have swung the paddle and tossed us to the housing authority. They swung the paddle, swung us back here, and back and forth we went. All the while, the housing authority didn't have many answers. You guys had more questions than you did answers when we asked them. So it looks like Mr. Heimbach did his due diligence and answered the questions that you couldn't or wouldn't. Upon doing so, he found that the answers that Mr. Hutchinson has frequently asked in the contract, the salary, the numbers, all the while, more and new questions arise. As more answers come in, more questions arise. Now, we all understand COVID. We understand the severity of it. But to look at COVID and say, well, here's a reason why it didn't happen. Well, then tell me why Mr. Murray was not furloughed during COVID. If he was doing nothing and nothing could be done, why not furlough him and stop sending money out? Okay, so basically it's proving once again that this is manufacturing payouts with zero results. There's not going to be results. Mr. Carlemere brought up the fair share, and the fair share we talked about. You and I were in agreement when we first talked about this, when the township had just raised taxes again, and we were getting many vacant homes. And as a remedy to these vacant homes, we had discussed, and I had asked you if this would go into the requirement that Gloucester Township had for the vacant homes. And you were looking into it, and I agreed. It looked like a great and promising program. That has since then not happened, and it does not figure into the fair share housing requirement that Gloucester Township has. It does not and will not. So whatever it is they're working on for the market to affordable is not going to help the numbers that are required by the state. It's going to help Gloucester Township in any way. What is intended to help Gloucester Township is the Fair Share Trust Fund. That is intended to help people that are in need of affordable housing. That's to help them. And all that we see is money going out. We're not even going to talk about properties. We're just talking about market to affordable. Money going out. And that money is intended to do good for good people. It's to help them. But instead we gave it to Mr. Murray. Well, he couldn't do anything during COVID or chose not to do, or did something. Either way, 20 months later, 22 months later, still a goose egg. Nothing. So Mr. Heimball came with a bunch of answers that you could not come up with and questions that you had asked. And it looks more than clear that instead of looking into it further, I think it's time you just figure out what it's going to take for this body of government to get with that other body that does all that they do or don't do and figure out how to put this to rest. Now, the last meeting that we were at, the Zoom meeting, I don't know what questions were answered by the liaison. I don't remember hearing them. I don't remember them coming to council. But the question's basically been floating around here. It's more than obvious that you guys are really letting this go on way too long. It's going on way too long. It's making the housing authority look foolish. And pretty soon they're going to drag you down with them. It's not going to help the numbers. You're certainly using money that is intended for good people to find an affordable home and giving that money for services that will turn out nothing. You guys should really think about this. And I did not hear anybody disagree with me when I said when the fair share housing requirement was brought up that it's going to help. It's not going to help the numbers. Why don't we work on getting and taking care of the people that this is intended for? Stop wasting money on that. Put this to an end. And stop debating. Stop finding new questions to answer to prolong this. Because like I said, eventually they're going to take you down with them. Do the right thing. Help the people that this is meant to help. And stop letting the money go out the door. You'll find other places to spend it. But let this money go to where it's intended. And stop the foolishness. Thank you.
Thank you. Denise?
Ms. Coinchoose Landing. Mr. Carlemere stated that the township assigned the market to affordable to the housing authority to handle. So, Mr. Hutchinson, if you're unhappy with the way the program is being handled, can't council take it back and put it into it?
Did you say that this was assigned? Did we assign?
Yeah, our ordinance designated, going back many years before this housing authority administration. We have an ordinance naming the housing authority as our liaison for affordable housing. And that was the transition over the years of the market to affordable, and part of our plan, how all of that goes back to, I forget the our executive directors and administration over there, that was going to supervise that market to affordable or affordable housing.
I'll think about it.
That would be kind of you. The second comment I have is I'm really disappointed to hear that my questions are being referred to Triad. I went down that road once and didn't get any answers to questions that I sent to Triad. So I would really like somebody to tell me what I need to do to get answers to my questions.
So you don't feel that your questions at all are being answered?
Absolutely not.
Which question are we talking
All of them.
about? Oh, let's deal with one at a time. Okay. How many questions?
Okay, I asked who the stakeholders are for the Village of Gloucester.
We talked about these ones tonight, the four that you sent?
Yes, from what I can see, that looks like the,
Which
yes.
number?
I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, you have it.
It's not from tonight.
Here you go. These are the questions for tonight. Okay, so which one?
No, I'm talking about the questions I
So
sent,
that was at the
that Mr. Card has sent to Triad Associates to have answered, that were not answered, that I believe you were CC'd on.
Were they read to me, those questions?
No,
No, but my statement is, I was told before that Triad Associates were going to answer questions that I had asked counsel to ask or answer for me.
But I want to establish that you.
Mr. Cardis sent the questions to Triad, and I, oh, T&M, and I still got no answers.
Stand
Yes.
check it, and I forward you, either the next day or the day after that, responses from Mr. Sochak.
That were not answers
Okay,
to my
but I'm
questions.
looking at
They
tonight's
look like
questions.
answers to
I'm
me.
not gonna deal
Well,
with,
they were.
I don't wanna deal with last week's questions first. I wanna deal with these questions. Question one, who is the designated redeveloper for the interchange redevelopment plan?
Yes.
Did you get an answer to that question?
I got the answer, multiple lots, several blocks. So you can't tell me the names of several redevelopers?
Simon was one of them. David Buster's, Ken, stop me if I'm wrong. Other than that, I don't know, because that's the western side, right?
First of all, I'm not sure when the question came in, but I didn't get it until about 4:30.
You came in 2:14 today.
Okay. To answer some of the questions respectfully, it takes some research to find out. I just don't have them off the top of my head. But Simon Properties for the Gloucester Premium Outlets, Dave & Buster's, Applebee's submitted a plan and were named redeveloper, but the project didn't proceed. I believe they're the only three in the interchange.
The next question, who is the redeveloper for the Villages of Gloucester redevelopment plan? Did you get an answer for that, Denise?
The answer I got to that was no applicants.
Is that the answer?
If that's
Is that the,
factual,
is that
yes.
the correct answer?
That's true. No one, to the best of my knowledge, has applied to the Township Council as a redevelopment entity to apply the Villages of the Gloucester Township redevelopment plan. It's an overlay plan. So the applicants that we've had have applied the underlying neighborhood commercial zone, which is Auto Images and Lidl US operation. But even though they're in the Villages of Gloucester Township redevelopment plan area, they apply the underlying neighborhood commercial zone.
okay, and that's from 2015, the 2015 plan. You're not speaking about the amended
Yes.
plan that's in the works. Okay.
You satisfied with that response, Denise?
Yes.
Good. Let's go to number 3. At the July 12th meeting, Council President said he would follow up with the mayor to see if the community could be involved with redevelopment planning. Is there an update? What was the answer to that?
That Tracy Trotto had no info.
Okay, so there's no update. Are you satisfied with that response?
No?
Is it an answer to your question?
It's an answer, but
Okay.
it's not an answer. I mean, it's been since July the 12th.
Your question was, is there an update? And there is not.
Okay, so I guess
Okay.
next
The answer-
meeting I'll ask why there isn't.
That's fine.
Okay.
Number 4, have any property owners or developers applied for any grants or financing for property improvements or demolition within the villages of Gloucester? What was the answer?
Ask Triad.
No, it wasn't, it was a list
Oh,
of.
It was Ask Triad, and
I
then
went
you
up and
gave me
correct-
a list of small business loans, CBDG grants, $5,000, which is not what I was asking.
That's the information we have on businesses receiving grants that are in that area.
So your question asked for, have any property owners or developers applied for any grants or financing? So they gave you 4 situations where property owners or developers applied for grants. Now, if that does not answer your question,
Well, I was also told to ask Triad.
okay,
So what am I
that's fine.
asking Triad? For the
Now you
rest of
don't-
them?
Now you don't have to because they gave you an update.
Okay, but you're telling me,
Who told you to go ask Triad?
She read that.
No, I don't believe I said for her to ask Triad. I believe my words were,
no, you gave me an answer for the small business loans, the CBDG money. I was asking if any property owners or developers have applied for any grants or financing that's available through the property being in a redevelopment area.
And they read you the name.
Nothing that
But the
went through.
CBD grants has nothing to do with that.
Township. No, nothing that went through the township. Could they apply on their own directly, the federal government or state? Maybe, I don't know.
Is going through Triad not going through the township?
They did, there's nothing that, the ones that went through Triad, I just listed 4 properties. You got those.
Okay.
The ones that went through Triad.
What
I
about
don't
the
know of
economic
anything-
development?
I don't know of anything else that went through Triad for grants for that area that you're talking about.
Okay, what about the
And you know of
EDC?
any? I don't know of any.
I spoke to Jake Botticello from Triad, he gave me the list of people who applied for small business grants. And out of that list, I provided, Vice President Tato the 4 names for the small business grant. However, there may be, according to talking with Jake, there are several types of grants available for business owners through the state that they could apply independently that the town may not know about.
Okay.
But he's the expert, I'm not, so I would have to defer to him.
Do you know somebody who applied for a grant? You got a grant?
No.
You're not telling me?
What about the EDC? Do you know if anybody's applied for funding through the EDC? Okay, how would one find that out?
Well, you can do what you did with asking these same 4 questions. And if you don't get answers in the next meeting, we're gonna do this again. And I'm gonna ask everybody at the meeting, and I'm gonna ask you if you've gotten an answer to the question.
So are you telling me to ask the questions to the EDC?
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Okay, I'm confused by your response then.
You submitted 4 questions today at 2:14.
Yes,
And you've gotten answers to those 4 questions. Do the same thing. Try to send it a little bit more in advance so that the people in the town can have an opportunity to research what you're asking, okay?
But I
But
want to understand that Economic Development Corp is not an arm of the township, it's an independent nonprofit corporation, it has nothing to do with government. The only thing they do is allow them to have their meetings here because their function, and their charter as a nonprofit corporation is to economic development in this community. So that's what I imagine why they afford them an opportunity to do their meeting here. But they're not individuals that are appointed by the township. They're not a division of government. They're an independent, nonprofit corporation under the state of New Jersey.
okay, can I ask, why the township chose to do that? Because, set it up that way? Because from
Township
my
didn't set it
research.
up that way. That
Okay,
was-
well,
that
then
was
let
a-
me rephrase my question. In doing research, I've discovered that other towns and other municipalities have economic development committees. They have economic development departments. They have economic development agencies, all of which the public is invited to, and they are transparent. We seem to have an economic development corporation that is totally non-transparent, that the public is not invited to, and that no one can get any information from.
Well, because this is, the Economic Development Corporation is not a division of Gloucester Township government. It's not appointed by any governmental body. They're not funded through the township. They're an independent corporation, just like any nonprofit corporation, food banks or whatever. They're nonprofit corporations. They're not set up. If another community, which they can, community can develop, have an economic committee. It's like they have a recreation committee. But this Economic Development Corporation is just that, a nonprofit corporation. They have their own bylaws. They do their own filing for tax purposes to New Jersey. They have their own professional do that, I would imagine. But they're not an arm of this government. That's why they're not a public body.
Okay, I believe that we paid $37,500 to Triad Associates, and one of the things that we pay that money for is for them to work with the Economic Development Corporation.
That might be correct. We might pay Triad to assist because that Triads, that's their function. That's Triad. That's not Economic Development Corporation.
That is the grants of the community development block grants and the code.
But that's still public funds, correct?
So when you keep asking who are the members and how they're appointed, they're their own body. They answer to the state of New
Well,
Jersey.
I don't recall asking that question, and I believe I know the mayor's on the Economic Development
Mayor's not
Corporation.
on the Economic Development Corporation.
Well, he attends the meetings,
He might attend the meeting.
and Ken Lechner attends the meetings, and I did look up who the other people are on that corporation. If you could just answer for me, what is the function of that corporation as far as,
Whatever their charter says is their function. I understand their function as the economic development for Gloucester Township. They work with business community, try and develop economic development in this community, but they're independent. They're not a division or responsibility of this government.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're getting close to the half-hour mark, so hopefully, go ahead, sir, you had your hand up before.
Evening, members, again. Ray Henry, Camden Avenue. I'm trying to get this whole thing figured out. I just want to make sure I understand. So, Mr. Murray has been employed for roughly 22 months. And we have no quantifiable way to say why we pay him.
Right, he's been employed, so let's not use the word we.
Okay, so
The housing authority, which is not this body, not this town. The housing authority has employed them. Now, it's my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong. The Affordable Share Plan initially contained a market to affordable component.
Correct.
And so back in 2019, just prior to COVID, it was the intention that that was going to produce affordable housing that we would be able to use to satisfy the requirements of our affordable sharing. Correct.
but what is his specific job?
But again, now, he is working for the housing authority, okay? And he is, I guess you would have to specific, if you're asking for his job responsibility, you probably have to ask that entity.
Does the township pay him?
We don't pay him. No.
So there's an employee that is supposed to be doing a job. Nobody's ever seen him.
Well, I can't say that.
Housing authority reports to the house.
Well, then for the next month's meeting, can we have somebody from the housing authority come?
They're public meetings. You can go to the housing authority.
No, I would like them to come here, so this way, everybody else, because I mean,
Order, Ray, I can't order an employee of a different entity to appear at us.
so then where's the money coming from to pay him? Who's paying him?
comes from the affordable housing dollars. Developers that come in and develop under the laws in New Jersey, commercial, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, is 2.5% of their commercial when COs are issued. Residential development is 1.5. That creates an affordable housing fund that each town has. That town has to answer to those funds to the state of New Jersey. Before the transfer of funds to have the individual, Mr. Murray, do market to affordable, we checked with our professional, Bach Associates, that that's appropriate. And they indicated that it was appropriate, 20-some thousand a year, to assign for someone to focus on market to affordable. Because market to affordable is part of Gloucester Township's fair share plan that's been approved by the courts. And I think our number was
So then where
100.
is his work? Like, what is he doing?
So he has to identify areas that there are dollars, and that he has reports that he gives to the housing authority. We don't see them. He has reports that he gives to the housing authority. You need to go there. And how he identified what areas could be used, because it costs dollars to buy it. So you have to get, and I would imagine, I'm not an expert on market to affordable. It's a difficult program. I've always said market to affordable is a difficult program, because you have to identify a property that's either been abandoned or it's in foreclosure and mortgage companies are walking away from them, or where you can afford to pay. You can't go in and spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for a piece of property and turn it into market to affordable because the dollars don't work. Usually they look for homes that might be abandoned and try to identify those that would meet the criteria of market to affordable. Once you do that, the law says you have to have somebody with expertise to go in to rehab them. And when they rehab them, then they sell them, and they're deed restricted for 30, 35 years or something like that, deed restriction from market to affordable, and that stays that way. And that's how the program. But throughout New Jersey, my opinion is market to affordable is a difficult program.
Do we have a liaison?
Yeah, we do.
Who's the liaison?
That's great.
So, have you attended the meeting? Has Mr. Murray ever reported that he's actively working? Oh, he said he was.
He is working, he works part-time. So, it's,
And I commented earlier that I spoke with the attorneys for the housing authority.
But this is, not to cut you off, but this is just one quick point, because my time's running out. You said last meeting that he was under contract and we need to honor that contract.
That's not true.
That,
No, you can't put words, please don't put words.
I'm
in
not
my
putting
mouth.
words in your mouth.
I
That's
asked-
what you said.
No, right, if I prove you wrong, I mean, what's that gonna say?
If you prove me wrong, then I'm wrong, but
Okay,
you
what I,
said you had to honor contracts.
no, okay, let me be specific then.
Okay.
I asked Ray, when he suggested that he be terminated immediately, I said, does he have a contract?
He doesn't. He
But I
could have
didn't,
inferred.
so you agree that I didn't say that he had a contract? I didn't know if he had a contract or not.
And then
Okay,
you said if he had a
if
contract,
he had a
to
contract, you
honor
would have to honor it.
but
the
how do we not
entity
know
would
if
have
he
to-
had a contract? If Miss Grace, this liaison, she would know if there was a contract.
Okay, well,
Am I?
when it
wrong
was
in
brought,
saying that? I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure if I was wrong, I didn't want to say anything.
I asked him, he said that he was terminated, and I said, hey, how much is he getting paid? I said, I don't know how much is he being paid. He said it was an exorbitant amount of money. I said, how much is he being paid? He said he didn't know how much he was being paid. I said, does he have a contract? And he didn't have an answer for whether or not he had a contract. Now, tonight, we know how much the housing authority is paying him. And we know, based on Pete's representation, which I have no reason to doubt, that, we know how much he's being paid and he doesn't have a contract. But again, I asked the question, can this body usurp the authority of another body? Okay? And that's really what it comes down to.
Maybe we should start looking into the contracts and start looking at the numbers and seeing what people are actually doing.
Well, somebody brought up a recommendation today, and I think it merits looking at whether or not we can rescind an assignment. It's interesting,
I mean, I would just like to see him quantify why he makes what he makes and why he made what he made while the rest of the world, including myself, sat home and lost two-thirds of my patronship.
Ray, I think that that's a valid question. I think if you go to that authority, ask that question. I mean, I don't think that's a bad question. Show me what you did.
I mean, you guys are the elected officials. Why can't you guys go and demand answers? I mean, that's what you guys were elected for. Am I wrong?
Well, Ray, we have right now, okay, we are going to be given from the housing authority a plan that's going to incorporate the market to affordable. That's what Mr. Parliament had just said this evening when I asked him those questions. So hopefully we're going to be able to get something from the housing authority as to where they're going with that.
No, I mean, I just like to see, like, somebody be able to quantify why this guy's getting paid during a complete shutdown where nobody's doing anything.
Okay, well, we're assuming he's done nothing based on what
Well,
everybody
I'm
here
just
is
saying,
saying. I mean, I don't know
was
if that's.
anybody out doing research in houses during 2020 at all, during lockdown? Because I know most of us were locked up in our houses. So I mean, I'm just peeling back the onion to try and figure out.
I understand your question.
But thank you guys for your time.
With that, we're gonna close the second public portion, polling of directors.
Mr. Parliament,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Curtis,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Lechner,
Nothing to report.
Chief Harkins,
Nothing to report.
Mr. Chadwell, Mr. Hutchison.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Everybody be safe on your way home and be safe with this Delta variant.
Ms. Grace. Mr. Minio.
Thank you all for coming. Be safe going home. Have a great week. Thank you.
Mrs. Winters.
I want to thank everyone for coming out, and like Councilman Hutchinson said, please be careful. COVID is coming back, the numbers are climbing. The hospital numbers are climbing, even in our local area, so please be careful.
Mrs. Rada.
Thank you all for coming out. Have a good week. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if you saw the ordinance. It is pretty big. It's roughly going to cover you. Think so?